Iowa, Michigan State from East Lansing, classic Big Ten battle, 17 final in favor of Sparty. Their first win in the Big Ten this season in their first outing. Iowa falls to 0-2 with two very difficult losses in the Big Ten. They are 3-2 overall. Mark Rogers TV with instant analysis. Subscribe to my YouTube channel and check out the long-form conversation pieces with some of the best bloggers and broadcasters in college football on iTunes, Podbean, and Stitcher. Just search Mark Rogers TV. All right, Mark D'Antonio, a rough outing against Notre Dame last week. If you check out the numbers, Sparty played with Notre Dame to a certain extent, but they made too many mistakes, turned the ball over. In this game, if you're looking at Iowa, Notre Dame, and Michigan State, they're very similar teams. Maybe Notre Dame's slightly better, maybe. But considering what we saw Iowa do against Penn State last week, maybe not. The difference in these two games was that Michigan State was the beneficiary of the turnovers today, whereas last week they turned the ball over and Notre Dame sprung out to the big lead and held on for the victory 38-18. Brian Lewerke at quarterback for Michigan State in his sixth start is nothing spectacular, but he makes plays. He can make plays with his legs, and he's the most athletic and mobile Michigan State quarterback maybe that we've seen in the Mark D'Antonio era. He hit on 18 of 28 passes for 212 yards and 2 touchdowns. There were some times at which Michigan State at one point had a 17-7 lead, and if Lewerke would have put the ball on the money in a few key situations, maybe it would have been a little bit more comfortable at the end, but he played a pretty good game and really gutted it out at the end and converted some third downs that were necessary to hold off Iowa. Mark D'Antonio looking for a number one primary running back. He wants a main guy, workhorse guy in the backfield. He's typically had that at Michigan State. You would think at this stage of his career, L.J. Scott would be that guy. He ran for almost 1,000 yards 2 years ago when Michigan State made it to the college football playoff and scored 13 touchdowns. But here we are 2 years later. Fumbling issues against Notre Dame last week pulled him out of the game. He did not start in this one. Ran it just 14 times for 28 yards. Michigan State, neither team could run the ball against the front seven of the other defense. It was that kind of running game, rushing attack, rush defense for both teams. As I said off the top, classic Big Ten game. Consider this. Lewerke converted a 3rd and 12 for 15 yards late in the game. It was a key situation there. We'll talk about it in just a second. Longest run of the game right there. These are two of the best backs, especially when we talk Akrum Wadley of Iowa. I believe him to be the second best back right now in the Big Ten. J.K. Dobbins, take a seat and wait, just improve yourself for a few more games. But to Saquon Barkley, Wadley, 17 carries for 30 yards. There was not a run longer than 9 yards on either side by any of the running backs. All right. Wadley carried it 10 straight times against Penn State to open the game last week for 0 rushing yards. Today, 6 straight carries for nothing. And as I mentioned, 17 for 30 against Michigan State. The Spartans have corrected some deficiencies on defense against the run that they suffered last year. And this looks more like Michigan State on defense, although we will see against the pass, in particular against Penn State, but again, also against Michigan starting next week. All right, Iowa was down 17-7. They got the ball to their own 42. This is late in the first half with 23 seconds on the clock. They had timeouts. They were down 10 points. Kirk Ferentz decided to do nothing. Bad play right there. Put the ball in your hands of your playmakers. You're down by 10 points. Limited possessions in this game. Consider that Michigan State only had the ball 4 times in the second half. So there are limited possessions. So you've got to take advantage of the possessions. You're already down 10. You're already near halftime. You've got the ball out to the 42. You've got 23 seconds and timeouts. You don't sit on the ball and go in at halftime down 10 and concede that situation. All right, they come out in the second half. Nathan Stanley drops it in the bucket to Nick Easley, his favorite target. That gets them to the Michigan State 25. This was the most entertaining series of the day because then later in the drive, it's a 4th and 8 for Michigan State, and they go with a faked field goal. Rastetter, the punter, throws it back across the field to Epinesa, who makes the nice catch. It was a good throw as a back shoulder of sorts. It was lobbed, but it proved to be a back shoulder play that converted it. But then just a couple plays later, Nathan Stanley inside the 5-yard line had broke contain. He was near the line of scrimmage. He possibly could have run it in, would have certainly gotten inside the 2 or 3 yard line, and he did a Garo Yepremian. And if you don't know your NFL history or you're under the age of a certain age, then look up Garo Yepremian, and you will almost for sure see in the images section the famous pass deflection volleyball serve against the Washington Redskins in Super Bowl VII. That's what Nathan Stanley did. It was a turnover and a very costly one in a defensive struggle in which points were at a premium, or a Yepremian. Nathan Stanley fumbles because he can't hang on to the football inside the 5-yard line. So Michigan State takes over. They're still up 17-10 at that point. Stanley, turns it over there. That was the culmination of a 62-yard drive. Next time Iowa gets the ball, they drive it 40 yards. They've got the offense starting to move, starting to do some things, mostly through the air, of course, because I gave you the rushing stats. They go on a 40-yard drive. Another fumble, this time by Brandon Smith at the Michigan State 35. Iowa could not run the ball wide. They continue to. I understand that they've got a fast running back, one of the fastest players in the Big Ten, but he's more shifty and quick, and the offensive line could not set the edge, and they continue to try to run wide. You've got a quick, shifty back with a burst. Why don't you try some sort of trap play inside to get him north and south and through the line quickly? Didn't try that very often. There was a 3rd and 2 play in which Iowa desperately needed to generate offense. They were down 17-10 at the time, or 17-7. Stanley made another bad throw just in the flat. It was a simple throw, couldn't convert it. They kicked the 43-yarder at 17-10. 4.5 minutes left. Iowa at its own 6. What is supposed to be their best wide receiver, Nick Easley, certainly gets the most targets, drops an easy throw. They design the play for him. He runs across the middle underneath, and he just flat out drops the throw on 3rd and 5. And that pretty much did it for Iowa. There were 2 key plays here in the last 5 minutes. One was the Easley drop on 3rd and 5 when they had to put together a touchdown drive. Then the Iowa defense gets Michigan State into a 3rd and 12, and Lewerke breaks contain and rushes for the 15 yards that I mentioned earlier. And that didn't necessarily seal it completely, but basically gave Michigan State a 98% certainty of winning the game, because they punted after not getting the next first down try, but they punt Iowa down to the 6-yard line. The Hawkeyes have no timeouts. They've got about 25 seconds left, and they could do nothing with it. Michigan State defeats Iowa 17-10. Spartans play at Michigan at the Big House. We know what happened there the last time they played at Michigan in 2015. Michigan State now 3-1, 1-0 in the Big Ten. Iowa drops to 3-2, as we mentioned, a tough 0-2 in the Big Ten. They will face Illinois next week. Mark Rogers TV talking Michigan State, talking Iowa, Big Ten, and the nation. Would love to hear from you now, right here on Mark Rogers TV.